I'm Alf Johnsen from VG Norwegian Daily. We've seen that Israel is continuing their attacks against Rafah yesterday and overnight, which was ordered to stop by the court in Den Haag last week. So how could we expect that your countries would react for Israel to live up to the court order? Thank you.
Well, I think all three of us for months have been saying that we're worried that the Israeli style of warfare in Gaza has been in breach of international humanitarian law. Now we know, because now we've had a compulsory order from the International Court of Justice ordering Israel to stop its attack in Rafah. This is compulsory, it's binding, which means that continuing warfare in Rafah is in material breach of a decision of the highest court of the world. We expect that Israel will follow international law and do what has been said. And in principle, it's up to the Security Council to enforce if there is a flagrant violation of international law.
Could I say that, first of all, again, all of this was predicted. All the UN agencies and humanitarian groups that I met predicted that any military operation in Rafah would have dire consequences for the population in Gaza. And that is exactly what is happening right now. This is on top of the hunger, on top of the starvation, the refusal to allow aid in sufficient volumes. But what we witnessed last night is barbaric. Gaza is a very small enclave, densely populated conurbation. One cannot bomb an area like that without shocking consequences in terms of innocent children and civilians. And we would urge Israel to stop now in terms of the military operation in Rafah. We need an immediate ceasefire. We need the unconditional release of all hostages, and we need a massive surge in aid into Gaza. From our perspective as three countries, and indeed the European Union itself, we are strong supporters of multilateralism and of the multilateral institutions and of international humanitarian law. And we have to robustly defend and uphold the independence of the International Court of Justice and indeed the ICC. And I think this is a moment in time in global affairs where the essential centrality, if you like, of these institutions must be upheld and their independence. And it has been a tendency of Israel to undermine UN institutions, but also to undermine the international humanitarian legal system. And the court's ruling is binding. It's extremely important that we stand up for the independence of the court and support the court in this vital matter.
Can I just add one reflection, which I think is essential here, which is that there is a perception in large parts of the world of double standards, that rules are applied to some, but not everybody. I think that critique is founded on some realities, and I understand why that perception has been created. And that perception undermines the credibility of the international legal system in general. So it's a serious problem for all of us. Because the impression created is that these norms are not does not apply to everybody, and many people will say then they do not apply to anyone. So I think this is also standing up for the principles that we have agreed to in the world. Remember, the International Court of Justice is everybody's court. The ICC is 124 countries, but the International Court of Justice is the principal organ of the UN. Every member of the UN is bound by the decision of the International Court of Justice.
Yesterday's bombing is one more day with innocent Palestinian civilians being killed. This stresses what we have been calling the three of us, our three countries, for a long time, that it's an immediate ceasefire. But the gravity is even larger because it comes after a decision taken by the International Court of Justice that, once again, I want to recall, that are binding and compulsory for all parties. They are for Israel, that is calling to stop this attack on Rafah. I think that this time we have to raise our voice, not only for an immediate ceasefire, but also to back international law and the United Nations Charter. I want to recall that the International Court of Justice, it's a founding body of the United Nations Charter. We are going to have a Foreign Affairs Council of Ministers of Foreign Affairs of European Union, and I'm going to ask the other 26 partners to declare the backing to the ICJ, to its decision, and also if Israel continues to pursue against that opinion of the International Court of Justice, that we try to take the right measure to enforce that decision and to back one of the most important bodies of the UN Charter.
Thank you. And one last question, Tony.
Thank you very much. Taoiseach, Irish Minister for Foreign Affairs, first of all, we saw the response of the Israeli government to the declaration last week of all three countries recognizing the state of Palestine. We saw what some people have said was the humiliation of the Irish ambassador in Israel. I mean, do you think that that was done? And also, we've seen the social media videos that were promoted by the Israeli foreign minister. Do you think that was done to try and discourage other EU member states from following suit? And are you hopeful that other member states could follow suit? And just to follow up on the last question, do you think if Israel does not comply with the ICJ decision of last week that sanctions should now be considered? Thank you.
We're not going to be in any way sort of diverted away from the core objective of our decision to recognize a state of Palestine. I do expect that others will follow our decision to recognize Palestine. I don't wish to reference any country. That's a matter for other member states of the European Union. But I do believe others will follow. And thirdly, I do believe it's a very serious moment in terms of multilateralism and the multilateral system. The International Court of Justice has ordered Israel to stop. And I think that is fundamental in terms of how we all in the international community respond, including the European Union. It is in the context of a major conflict right now. Our immediate focus has to be the ending of the bombardment of Gaza, a ceasefire, the release of hostages, and a massive surge of humanitarian aid. But I think, as Jose and Espen said, we have to strongly uphold the international humanitarian legal system, and there has to be consistency in terms of how we apply it in Ukraine and elsewhere, and in terms of how we apply it in the context of this war on Gaza.